One second.
Girl.
All right, family, and I think that we are what live. Hold on, I just checked. And okay, here we go. Peace and blessings, family. Welcome to another day of African Spiritual Conversations. And I'm excited because we are joined by Yeye out of Phoenix, Arizona, along with Colette and Ifa Modupe and myself. And I don't know about y'all, but I look forward to these conversations. I'll be ready. I'll be ready. So check in with y'all to see how y'all doing today.
Well, as I had said earlier, I'm doing great. Matter of fact, I'm looking forward to a piece of uh, cake that I got yesterday in the mail.
Okay.
One of my goddaughters gave me a cheesecake, almond cheesecake for my birthday and mailed it to me. So, like, I'm waiting for another cut of it.
Okay.
So, it won't be any diets today.
What about you, Colette?
Oh, I'm well. I'm well. I would love to get the recipe for that almond cheesecake though. If you got some people won't give you their recipes. I don't need the secret ingredient. I'll come up with my own secret ingredient.
I understand.
I
I
put
think
some
what I think she had it made in Alabama with a friend of
Oh,
hers, and they mailed it to me.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, because I think it was called Zorro.com, something like that. I had little pieces off of it yesterday, so it was great.
Mm.
Right on, right on. What about you, Ifa Motupe? Drinking that
I'm
tea.
doing very well. Doing very well. I got up very early and ran my errands already. So the
Oh,
rest of my day is all free. I'm very happy.
okay. Well, I'm doing great too. Just got off a live with Barry and we talked about entrepreneurship. But the beauty of it was we had two people who run businesses, and one of them lives in maybe it's San Diego
Mm.
or Arizona. I'm not sure, but they were in the tradition. It was a husband and wife team.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
that's
So,
great.
I said, oh, I like that. It was really awesome. It was a great conversation. So we talked about Black folks not being distracted during this time. Like, don't worry about the white people protesting. That's on them. Let them do what they do. You should be using this opportunity to build for yourself. Like, let them go. We had a protest downtown yesterday, and white people, man, we want our businesses up. Like, let them, like, doesn't nobody care about that. I better try to say positive. So anyway, that was we talked about. You said that you came out of the Olatunji village. Is that correct?
Oyatunji, the lineage. So when I was initiated to a Gungun, it was through Bobby Ifatunji, Shangadini Ifatunji in Chicago. And that was like 1994, somewhere in there.
Wow.
So, and then from there, that ushered me into Shango, then and Ifa, and then all the other traditions that I've initiated to since then.
Okay, but what are those other traditions? Because I just want to know.
Well, in other words, other parts of. So I have multiple Orisha. So I'm initiated to Shango. I'm initiated to Olokun. I'm initiated to Egbe. I'm initiated to in the Ogboni Society. I'm initiated to in the Egbe Society. That's what I mean by that. And of course, Ifa.
That's it.
And so my Ifa is 20 years,
Wow.
20, 21 years, somewhere in there.
What was your journey to even become initiated? Period?
Ooh, that it was long and hard. I started out as a 14-year-old kid in Chicago, and it's in the 60s. So there was a lot of turbulence, a lot of political turbulence. There's a lot of You want to call, well, I call it spiritual turbulence as well. But I actually was a runaway. And I had ran away from home because my mom had pissed me off. I didn't know how lucky I was, really, that she didn't put her hands on me at that time. She would have killed me. But I had heard drums along 31st. I was walking over around the beach on the lakefront in Chicago. And I heard the drums, and then something in me just decided to follow the drums. So when I followed the drums, I got to where they were drumming, which was on 31st and South Park. So this is 1960, 64, 65. So it wasn't even called Kings Drive then. So it's still South Park. When I got there, there was this black rooster swinging in the doorway. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And I felt at home. And the music was so good, I went in and started dancing too. And that's how I started. And the place was actually called Ilefe. And the head priest at that time was Chief Pajama out of Oyatun. And that's where my actual beginnings start. So we're talking long time ago. So since I'm 69 now, we're talking 50 some years ago.
What do you think about the evolution of this tradition some 69 years later?
You know what? With all evolutions, we look at it from a perspective of it has grown and then some parts of it has gone backwards. But the backwards part of it is evolutionary. You have to have evolution and things that are always going to be jumbled upside and down because you're working it against traditions that are in place against things that are new. So I think that there's a lot that is good for the tradition, but some of the things that I think that are falling to the wayside are the service oriented things because we're first about service. We should always keep that in mind, service to Arisha, service to our community, service to our family. And then from there, we have to grow into other things and what that service does for us and how it's defined. So I think that with that being said, um, I've seen that in many instances, that's some of the things that's being lost. Not fully, but some things are being lost. Um, Other things that I would like to see happen though is more authenticity of worship. It's not just a party and to go to a drum. It really has to be with your heart and your mind and your spirit to be opened up to this spiritual relationship that you have with Olodumare and the Ifa and the Orisha. And with that, it takes you, oh, let me not forget Ori, our head. And once we have that, then we have something that's so much more powerful. I think that if we had some of the things we have now back early in the 60s, I think that we would be a more powerful people right now. I think we forgot what that looks like to a certain extent, too.
Okay. Here, Colette, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with Yay Yay. I just feel that the last part that she said about if we had that more of that in the 60s, I think we need more of that now. And that is the service piece, because I agree 100% that the tradition in building good character and gentle character, the pillar of that is one of the pillars of that is service to the Orisha, to the Egun, to your family, to your community, and thereby to your nation, a nation which we are building, um, a rebuilding, because we're already a nation, We're a mighty, mighty nation. We are just splintered, and we have forgotten who we really are, and that's because the whole thing with history and culture that has been taken away from us, or we didn't learn it. But we're relearning, we're remembering, we're putting back together the pieces of the puzzle that will make us stronger, stronger. Give us that element of service and help us to reestablish the nation. The one thing that's really important for all of us to understand is we may lose a battle, but we're going to win this war. We are. It
Yeah, we
can.
are.
It cannot be any other way. The people who have been here for 600,000 or more years, thousands of years, who have built civilization, who came up with astronomy, astrology, mathematics, medicine, all of the things that we have put into place, you can't defeat those people.
True.
You might win a battle. You might hold them down for 400, 500, 1,000, 2,000 years. But eventually, they will rise and they will be mightier than ever. So I agree with Ye. There are some things that we have lost and gone by the wayside, but don't ever forget, we will be back. Mm-hmm.
So, if I multiply, so how long have you been in this tradition?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. I made five in 96, 95, 96. And and I was studying maybe, let's see, 90, since 90, I would say since 1990, 1991. Um, is when I met my godparents, my first godparents, and got my legays. And I have a question though,
Please.
for Yeye and Ia
Mhm.
about um, the service piece, right? How do you think that that's tied to how political the people that are involved in the tradition are? Like, everyone that I've met, all the elders that I've met that entered the tradition during the 60s um, were very political, very pan-African
Mhm.
in their approach to the tradition, and that they were building community as they were building ilays and egbays and temples, and they were involving the community and everything.
Mhm.
At the time in the early 90s, there wasn't no Facebook or none of that, so it
Right.
was really just a bunch. We had a really big ilay in, well, big compared to the size of the house, and a lot of young people. So we knew between all of us, we knew everybody almost in the city. And
Mhm.
so when we had festivals or bembes or whatever, we just going to the river or the ocean to pray. Then we would invite people, especially people that we know had challenges that would be addressed by those particular orisha. And so we were able to reach out and connect with everybody in the community. So when people hit a snag or they had a problem that they thought spiritual work would help, they would come
Mhm.
to the priest, right?
Right.
That's not so much. A lot of people practice in private. A lot of people are more, I would say, academic oriented rather than political oriented. How do you think that that's impacted the service piece of practicing the tradition?
Well, you have to look at service is multifaceted. Service is, as you said, how people would come and if they had a problem getting there or to any functions that's part of service. Service is if you find that in your community, there are people in the community, whether they are a part of that Elay temple, um, they are in need. Service is if we're doing ebo and you have meats that need to be slaughtered and shared, you can always share that meat with your community.
Yeah.
Service is also whatever your job may be. For
Mm-hmm.
example, I worked in counseling and I also worked in the prison system. So and prison ministry. So service also ended up being going into the prison system and doing work there. So and so's son gets arrested. I'm the advocate that sits before the prosecutor as well as the defense attorney and see what we can do for this child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's another part of service. So service is, like I said, multifaceted. So you want to be, it looks like that. And in the 60s, it was growing to that. And yes, it was very political. You were at the time when you had the Panthers were at their height. You had other groups, now organization. Everything was connected to the times at that time,
Mm-hmm.
the volatility of that times, because we were looking for different levels of freedom. And also during that period of time, people were attaching a religious motif to the political nature of what was taking place in the lives of black people
Yeah.
and brown people. So, but more importantly, black folks. So we had to deal with that. I think that then it evolved. There were times in some of the elays that I was out of that we would collect clothes. At the end of the year, we would have services for our mothers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that year, and this is in the earlier 90s, they would gather every person would gather clothing that they didn't need, but serviceable clothing. And
Mm-hmm.
they would take it to the shelters. Okay. So those were the types of things that were taking place then.
Yeah.
And in some instances, those are still some of the things that are taking place now. Service has to be it's also from a leadership positioning too.
Mm-hmm.
If the people of the leadership of your houses are not service oriented, they're not going to do service. Maybe someone else in that Elay would be that person. But it really does also depend upon the persons that you are working with in that leadership that should be pushing the idea of service. In the 60s, there was so much. Yes, it was Pan African. But I think that what happens too, and what happened along the way, was that as it came out of those times, many instances, so many had started to, as they left the diaspora and started to reconnect with West Africa.
Mm-hmm.
This is when uh, the mindset started to change. It's also when our idea of how to do service changed as well. We were learning new things. We were learning new prayers. We were learning new rituals. We were learning different aspects of things of this tradition, cultural things.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at, okay, in the earlier 90s, or you can go even further back in the 80s, an idea of how we were so into the culture
Yeah.
in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was about, and that became part of the Pan African mindset. We were wearing traditional clothing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We were eating traditional foods all the time because we wanted that to be a larger part of who we were in identifying our religion. So
Yeah.
that was a greater part of what we were doing as well. That outward as well as inward. Service actually changes you inwardly. The
Yeah.
clothing, the idea of what you wore, how you wore it, those things, the um understanding of the culture changed you. But those are, those are just some small aspects of it.
Hmm.
Did that answer you?
Yes, thank you. You
Mhm.
you have anything to add to that?
The only thing I can say to that is everything Ye said. All right.
Shay.
Um, yeah. The only other thing is the academics. They are
Mhm.
also in service because
Yeah.
it was the academics that allowed us to begin, that allowed that window to open to our culture. We
Okay.
began to understand
Mm.
where we came from, how we got to where we are, all of the things that happened thousands and thousands of years ago that we have been misinformed about. And so the academics had their role to play as well as, others. And you need, everybody has a piece of the puzzle,
That's right.
Hmm.
and you need everybody to do the best that they can do with the gifts that they have been given. Everybody is not meant to be a priest, and everybody is not meant to be a leader. There are some people who happen to be at the head of an elay who really are not leaders. And so if their if their head is in the right place and they're really honest with themselves and the people in the elay, then they will step aside and let someone who is better at that role head up the elay. That doesn't mean that they are put aside. It just means that if their strength is in academics, or if their strength is in the herbs, there are many, well,
Hmm.
priests who are really, really good at herbs. And it has nothing to do with even book learning. It's just, it's who they are. And
Mhm.
so they might not be great as the head of an elay. That's not their thing. But you want to know about an herb and how to heal, you go to Baba so and so or Iyas so and so, and that's their specialty. So
Mhm.
everybody has their place,
Yeah. That's right. Thank
and one is no better than the other. Because you got to have a leader, but you also got to have all them other people. If you have no one to help you with the herbs, with making omiato and all of that, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's
When were you all first introduced to spiritual baths in the tradition?
oh.
What
Good
was your
question.
first introduction to that?
Um, for Omeros and things like that, that was very pretty much in my beginning. Yeah, because it started out with being introduced to shrines, being and then working.
Mhm.
You get to a place where you want to learn, and the best way to learn is by watching and doing.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much how I started was as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, spiritual baths are what really brought me around when I was very, 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 very young. Um, so that's just that's one of the first things I'll think of if I'm ill, or mentally or physically, um, or spiritually, uh, a, a spiritual bath. Yeah. And the other thing that we had all the time is we had a relationship with crystals. So that is it. we've talked about this in the past. My pathway into the tradition was pretty different than most people. Although during my time, there were people who were initiated in the way that I was as a child, a little child. And but the tradition was not as I hate to use this, but this is the only phrase I can think of, one dimensional. So, in other words, our tradition encompassed not only the Lukumi tradition, and then I went to Ifa, but as a child, it encompassed African spiritual tradition. Everything, the earth, the herbs, the candles, the baths, the crystals, everything. Everything was one with nature and one with creative spirit. And that's how I was taught from a child.
Hmm.
Mm.
What about you, Eva Multiplay?
Um, Spiritual baths and omieros. That's like Yeye said. When I came into the tradition, the way to learn was to be at the Ile working.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant secretarian readings. That meant caring for shrines. That meant working, making omieros, beating alekes. That was just, I mean, cleaning up,
Yeah,
and,
feathers.
cooking. It was just everything. And I think at the time, I thought it was a curse to be the only female in the Ile when I came in. A lot of women came right after me, but when I got there, it was all boys and me. And so, so I got hit with a lot of stuff. But the blessing was that I learned so much because I mean, I couldn't even keep a job. Like I just wanted to be there soaking up information and doing the work, and I was young. I had the energy to do it. And so that just made it all the more um, educational, like expansive for me. It was just a holistic experience because if I had an issue, I was already there. You know what I mean? And it's I think for me it was like an immersion experience because everything that happened in the house had to do with the tradition. So it wasn't like I could do something that I thought was random and it would be explained to me as a ritual. And
Mm.
so that was the blessing. And then I would go down to the river with my godparents collecting herbs for Omiero. I got to go with them to do the shopping for spiritual supplies and all of that. It took me a while to really appreciate the position that I was in, but I was really blessed to be in that position.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because that actually was your service.
Yeah.
That was
Yes.
the beginning of your service.
Service.
And also with that education, that's the kind of education that so many people aren't getting today. Because hands
Mm-hmm.
on, this is an oral tradition. And
Mm-hmm.
by it being an oral tradition, we should be sitting at the feet of our elders
Mm.
and learning from that perspective. So many people are learning other ways, which is okay to a certain extent because having academia as an educate, that kind of education is part of this. There was a point when that was all we had was anthropological books. I
Hmm.
remember when Ifa Divination was the book,
Right.
or 16 Cowries was the book. There
For
was
a
no Fupola,
long
there
time.
was no Benro, there was, all these other people, all these other writers, prolific writers as they are, Ayo Salami, all of them. They weren't there. They were introduced into this country, into this society by people like Ibaratunun Odun Fashangu Bukola, uh, K. Fields brought the first book over here from Pupola. okay, along with Baba Fashina. So you have all these other people that had to introduce this work. And let's not forget Yoruba Press and Althea Press. Uh, those people helped to bring information here. But the anthropological books was all we had in the 80s yeah, and the 70s. You didn't have that. So it was an oral tradition. You learn by being able to listen and do.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that's how you learn. Because I remember going in the forest and having to pick a way and other things. But I also knew that there are certain a way that we had that grew right in the cracks of the concrete.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you learn to recognize different herbs to make omero to do other medicines because omero is just one type. It's just soft water. So it's one type of medicine. There are many other medicines that we have from that. But you
Mhm.
learn that at the feet of the people that came before you.
Yeah, and a lot of that isn't happening uh, today or these past couple of years. A lot of that teaching, that oral and doing, going to the Botanica with either your god sisters or brothers or your godmother, godfather, whoever, going there and getting your objects and your different herbs and things that you might need. Um, that's part of learning the tradition. That's part of the tradition. I mean, if you go back far enough, we had to go into uh, the fields and the forests to pick our herbs. Um, we still have to do that on this side of the ocean.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't. A lot of houses don't do that. The herbs are sitting on the table, and you just put things together. Part of making the omiero or anything else is to go pick your herbs, or at least go to the store or the botanica and get them. I
Well,
mean,
ritualistically, we can always, I'm sorry, yeah, we can
No,
always
go ahead.
ritualistically think about what that does. Not just
Mm-hmm.
at the botanica, but if you're going in and you're getting it straight from nature, you have to
Mm-hmm.
also look at what are you doing? You are giving honor to the earth. You're doing prayers. See, it's not
Mm-hmm.
just we go pick up stuff. We had to do prayer
Yes.
to that. We had to do Osine prayers. And then
Mm-hmm.
from doing Osine prayers, we're giving honor to the other deities that are going to help this gathering. And this is also infusing that herb and you with
Yeah.
and charging you with the removal of that from the earth so that it will because the idea is that it is to heal something, heal somebody,
Mm-hmm.
break something off of someone, a spirit or things like that that will that's impacting a person's life in a negative way, or we
Mm-hmm.
making
Mm-hmm.
medicine to enhance someone so things can come to them. So with a larger part was what are we saying to the earth?
Yes.
How are we honoring the earth? We're giving praise and prayer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're singing songs to pull these out. Okay,
Yeah. When you
Yeah.
you
watch
know.
Yeah.
it, then you
So it
doing the
has to
song.
go. These
Yeah.
are things that got to go back to if they're not doing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's the
Eh,
point. These things got to go back to, as opposed to um we're and it's and a lot of times they're not being taught because they don't know how. They
mm-hmm.
if they didn't get taught, you know then sometimes they
True.
just don't know how,
Yeah.
and ego gets in the way of saying I need some help.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, because me personally, I'm a good one. Hey, help me. I don't know this. And I don't have a problem picking up the phone, talking to somebody saying, hey, this, and this is happening, what I need to do. That's what community does. And that's another point. Where's our community? What are we doing as an egg bank? See, I have a temple, but I also have an egg bank of people, different people that I'm related to, that also help and have their own temples. So it's not about, you know, you can't go over here, you can't go over there. It's about we have to help each other. And the way that we do this is we consider Egbe. And I have, you have to think about some of these things as part of our idea of what service is.
Yeah, it's all service, really,
Mm-hmm.
all of it. Um, with when you go to pick those herbs, I remember so clearly with my grandmother. When you go to pick those herbs, it's the prayers you say, it's the respect that you give that gives the ashe, that awakens the ashe within
Mm-hmm.
the herb to perform what you want, the healing that you
Absolutely.
want. It's always your intention, your prayer, what you
Right.
say, what you sing, how you dance when you find something that you're looking for and that you have had a hard time finding. Um,
Right.
and
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
even when you go to the Botanica, when you go to the Botanica, it is so important to go with the intention of prayer and respect and say, for me, I always approach the Botanica with prayer before I turn that knob because you never know what you're going to find on the other side. So, uh,
You better pray coming out the house.
yeah, and then when I come out of there, I said, well, I sure hope they gave me with the right thing because we ain't even speaking the same language. But okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a big piece that I don't know. I talk to a lot of people who are just now entering the tradition, and that's something that they don't get a lot of. Like, and that was my primary mode of education in the tradition in the beginning. I realized that I didn't need to touch a book almost until I was initiated. And so
Mm-hmm.
there were books around, but we weren't even learning like that. And we had full-on classes and all that. And except
Mm-hmm.
for the catechism from Frog Benro, that was the only thing
General, yeah.
that that was the only book that I had almost till
I
I
still
got
have my
initiated.
copy.
Right. And I keep having to find that because it come up missing as soon as somebody come visit. But
Yep.
because it's one of those things where it's just laid out for, in a remedial understanding, but there's a lot of gems in there. Like I still say that
Mm-hmm.
Ella chant like every day. That's in the catechism. And
Yeah.
so it's just it's a priceless experience, and it also builds that relationship to Osine and the other Orishas, that relationship to understanding the different qualities of plants rather than just the names. Like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know the names of a plant, but I could look at a plant for a long time and be like, okay, I know what that could be used for. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And then your relationship to the earth, so that you know what you're always aware, like being in the tradition and being in the world, you can acknowledge everything around you as divine
Absolutely.
because you've been doing that work. And it really
Mm-hmm.
does take work to just get it in you as a part of your being.
Well, it is truly that relationship, because the more we are working at shrines and hands-on experience with Orisha, that not only that we're initiated to, but we're introduced as well to, that those relationships are established further and further into our mindset, into our, it's inculcated into our very being, the
Yes.
more that we are involved with them. And so if you're doing ibas every day at your shrine, that relationship, you're giving cola, you're giving your gin, you're giving your rat, your fish, your echo, all these different things at your shrine, you are creating this bond, this symbiotic bond and relationship that you have that will continue from now, from the day you start until the day you die. This is blood in, blood out, you know? You know, it's straight up. So,
The other thing that I wanted to mention that just popped into my mind is we also have a very a prayerful and a respectful relationship with the animals that we use in
mhm,
any of our rituals. So
absolutely.
yeah, that's really important. Not only the plants, but the animals as well.
Hmm.
That's
And we have to have a respectful relationship because they're carrying a message for us. And that message is the one of healing and the message of when that portal is opening for that spirit to go through. Because the blood itself, the ashe of the blood, is what keeps that portal open. So when you have that, we want that message not to be a cruelty, that we thank them for helping us. You know, we're thanking them for feeding our community, for moving the evil of illness off of us. So those are the things that we have to maintain, a mindset of spiritual, a dynamic spiritual ideal that keeps us firmly focused in on what it is that we're here doing this for. You know,
Yeah,
it's what we are supposed to be doing on a regular basis every day in and day out. And that's what makes African spirituality such a unique form of worship, that we have that, and it grows, it elevates.
yeah,
Well, part of the prayer that I say almost every day is raise us up above all misfortune and to bring in our array. But I want anything that's out here negative that's trying to come to disrupt my life, disrupt my children's life, disrupt my spiritual family's life, or the people that we care about, wherever they are. I want that stuff done and away. So we have to, this idea of constantly staying in a state of spiritual elevation is what we should also be thinking about doing as well. And that's something too that needs to be taught.
yeah. Yeah, the tradition is a lifestyle. It's everything that we do. It's the way we think.
Mm-hmm.
It's regaining our African minds, our Africanness, our African beings that are asleep. That we didn't lose them. We don't have to go back and find them. This is not a case of Sankofa of fetching it. This is a case of putting it back together, putting it back together in our
Yeah.
own heads and in our own lives. And as we begin to learn different things, these steps that we have to go through, these prayers, these putting into my mind that I have to be thankful for the plants, for the animals, for my Ile sisters and brothers. But I have to be thankful for all this, and this is all of who I am. When we see it that way, it puts us on that road to good character and gentle character, and it's infectious.
Yeah, it is. It
It's
absolutely is. It absolutely is. Yeah, do you ever find that when we talk about Iwa Puele, Iwa Rere, okay, gentle character versus good character, that's slipping away from people of late in terms of, because I don't always get into conversations online, but I look at blanketly across the country, and I'm wondering, are people really understanding how to get to good character? Because it's not just something that you can roll on and iron on. It's something that it has a how to it. And how do they get there? What do they need to do in order to challenge themselves every day to change their minds about how they think? Because we're in a time where we got to change how we think,
Yes.
because it's important for us as a people, as a world, because we're a global community. We're not just here in the United States, we are in the islands, we're in South America, we're in Europe, we're in Africa, in different parts of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be, as a global community, we got to really start to identify how you get to having really good character. What does that mean? Because, see,
Mm-hmm.
good character to me is a perception, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You can, because, like, I might want to knock somebody out, you know, and, and be ready
Yes.
to rumble, at the same time. But then good character steps in and says, is this what Oludumare wants? Is this what Ifa wants of you? Is that going to help that person go to their next step? Because you are the priest that they're going to run into. Your job is to have the moral ethic and ethos presentation to others. So how we get to good character?
Well, I'm going to go to your last part before I go to the first part, and that is to say that sometimes you do have to pull out them fists and rumble. And
And I
I'm
want to do it in good character too.
yeah, that's it. But I'm talking
I'm gonna
about
whoop that butt.
our fight as a people.
Yes.
We're gonna have to fight. We're gonna
Yeah.
have to be willing to die for what we know is what we really, even above what we believe in, what we know it in our very beings. We have those genetic memories. We know. And it may come a time, and it may not be that far away, when we're going to have to stand together arm in arm and face whatever is in front of us, just like our ancestors had to do at certain times. We're going to have to stand firm. Now, and of course, once we do that, the character will be very good. Um, but how do we get good? The first thing for me with developing good character is being truthful with myself about
Absolutely.
who I am and what I need to work on within myself. And that work for me, that
Mhm.
work is never done. It may be done when I transition back to where I came from, but until then, I have work to do on me. And I think that's how we have to be truthful about what that work
Mhm.
is and
Right.
acknowledge our shortcomings. Because if we were perfect, we wouldn't be here. We would be in a different dimension. So that means I have things to work on. And the things that I have to work on, since I am a part of the creator and creation, and I'm co-creating with the creator,
Mm-hmm.
what I go through and the experiences I have are are creating within, this is going to sound a little odd, but creating within creation.
Mm-hmm.
You see, and so in order for the creator to have this experience, he or she, it is having it through me because I am matter. I am on
Mm-hmm.
this third dimension. So as much as I may have this little floor here and that little floor here, and I go fly off the handle there, all or whatever my thing is, I need to work on that to develop my good character. That's number one. Number two is in my elay, if I'm a part of this tradition and I'm blessed enough to be in a really forward thinking elay, all of my brothers and sisters and priests and so forth in that elay are on this journey with me. And so they also will point out certain things that, oh, and the best piece of this is when I hit that mat, I'll know because it's going to come out in the reading.
Yeah, Aisha is a tattletale, It will
And
tell your business.
hallelujah.
Yeah.
And so that means, listen, this is something that you whatever the ebo is, whatever it is that I must do, this I must do in order to get back into balance. In order,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah, you have to think in terms of, especially here's another piece too, in terms of Ebo, that I hope that people are also telling their people is that when you are doing sacrifices, there are other components to it, which is listening in your readings to all of the directives that are being given to you by Ifa carefully and or the Orisha. And
mm-hmm,
then following those directives, if you can, to the letter. Okay,
mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm,
when doing an ebo is not enough, you got to listen and see what else is a part of that, and then
mm-hmm,
do that as well. Okay,
mm-hmm.
so that you're not missing out on your blessing, because you can
Exactly.
negate your own array by not following what Ifa tells you to do.
Mm-hmm,
Okay,
mm-hmm,
and understanding that. So that's
mm-hmm.
also extremely important.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I think that in terms of character or character development, we have to look at spiritual building blocks of what character it's in traditional is called omoluabe. So you are talking about that person who is of the highest character, and what they're doing is they're modeling their behavior, their mind, their everything after what Olodumare, Ifa, and the Orisha want us to do. And so, yeah, sometimes walking that path is not, it's that middle path. So it's sometimes you got the tiptoe, sometimes you go walk to the side, sometimes you're not. But if you are honest, truthful, okay, that you are doing things that are good, if you are doing more than that you're benevolent, compassionate, um, and allowing these things to walk ahead of you as people see you, that's part of your building blocks. Um, Sometimes we have people are spiritually deaf, and so they need to learn how to listen to spirit, and that means they got to get quiet. They
Mm-hmm,
have to get somewhere and be still. I'm not talking about the getting into the yoga position and you got to meditate for your download. I'm talking about just being quiet and hearing, being still sometimes and just listen. Like I got water fountains everywhere, so I like to just kind of sit still and listen to some water, you know,
Yeah.
because that just calms my nature, and I can hear what Ifa is telling me. You know, I can hear what Shango has told me. You know, that's my daddy, by the way. But anyway, I
Mm-hmm.
can, you want to be able to hear these spiritual downloads so that it will help you to change. So we got to get to those building blocks. And also, you need to identify the other side as well as those things that you need to stay away from. The insecurities, the jealousies, the anger. Surani babaiwa. You know, patience is the father of good character. We gotta learn to sometimes you ain't gonna get everything you want right at this second. Patience will get you there. You can wait on a lot of things. Okay. So that's part of your toolbox. So that's some things that we got to look at how we're gonna walk this walk in our community at large. And what is that going to look like in terms of good character for us?
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, we are at 11:59. This was a great conversation. I was in here like, taking notes myself, but also like just really listening. I'm a listener. Like when people are hitting on them truths, I just have to listen and take some notes. And um, tomorrow, could we talk a little bit more about your head and about how Orishas communicate with you? Like what does it really mean to pay attention? Like you just talked about
Mhm.
not just doing but with paying attention. Some people really don't know what that really means.
Oh yeah, there's a
I was wondering
number of ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, Joy King is saying, yeah, yeah, yes. I have some comments. Joy King is saying, Sister, yeah, yeah, this is so enlightening. Another sister, Allison, says, oh, yes, be still and know that I am God. Yes, you hear God's voice. Oh, yes, I feel this so much. Asheo. And
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
right, yes, like at church, praise the Lord,
Yeah.
hallelujah. Y'all got a lot of that up in here. Uh, Thank you for speaking about good character. It's important to God. Also, want to talk more too about what does it mean to find godparents, because that in itself could be a journey. To be
Yeah.
honest, but what does that really look like? And how do you know you're in the right place? Like stuff like that. I mean, you talk about
Mhm.
doing that work. Those. I like these conversations because you get to ask the questions that you would if you were doing anything else. Before you buy a house, before you jump into doing stuff, before you pick your college, before
Mhm.
you're talking to people. What is it like down there? What's the environment like? Like what classes should I take first, or first, second, third, fourth? Like you look at those things. I feel like sometimes it's
Mhm.
but that's the beauty of the internet. I'm sorry, I think technology be used for good or evil. I'm used for good. You can have those conversations and sincerity
Right.
and really ask those questions. And we are fortunate enough to have two queen mothers in our midst who have time
Right.
on their side in a good way. Because for me, I know I was molded by people who came out of those 60s and 50s. And so, like the 70s to me is like a golden era in my mind. Because
Right.
I really like saying sister and brother all the time. So for
Woo.
that is like edged in my being because I grew up in the midst of, I was fed on that. I was fed
Yeah.
on, hey little sister, hey little, like it was just like black people were my friends. Because we
Yeah.
were not friends, we
Yeah.
were family. So every
I
time we
mean,
Mm-hmm.
go
it was
somewhere,
beautiful time.
people fed me.
God.
I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was everybody's relative. So it's nice to have those reference points because I think sometimes when I'm looking at other cultures, I think sometimes what they're able to still have is those connections to the root
Mhm.
of seeing us in a better place than the way we are now. You know what I mean? There's something
Yeah.
Yeah.
beautiful about that. So hearing about that, I just want us to dive a little bit more tomorrow into that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do that? Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I can.
Okay.
I have a little bit of work early in the morning,
Okay.
but like I can get them, I'll get them in and out. Okay.
I have any closing thoughts before we wrap up? Because I'm so excited. So you know what happens is when we wrap up and go off air, we stay on air for a minute just for reflection. Off of
Okay.
any reflection or anybody before I end the live.
I have enjoyed this. It has been a conversation worth having.
I say.
And I thank Ifa and I thank Oludumare and I thank all the Arumule for allowing me a day of breath that I have this opportunity to speak with you all and for y'all to speak with me. It's been fun. I've enjoyed myself. And I'm gonna get my cake too,
Ooh. See, she keeps telling us about that good old cake that she gonna eat, and she know we can't have none. That ain't right.
It's a teaser. It's a teaser.
You're right. You're right about that. You sure are teasing me because I want some of that.
It's going to be a social distance taste test for us.
Right?
I just want to. This is. Oh God, this is such a blessing. This is such a blessing. Thank you. Thank you, Olodumare. Thank you, Ro, for putting this together because we've seen Iyas come and they share and then they have things that they have to do. They have work or they have whatever. And then someone else comes in and it was so good to sit here with Yeye. She is so knowledgeable and puts things in such a wonderful way. You mentioned spiritual building blocks. Of course, I'm a note taker. I got my notes here. Spiritual building blocks. I got to tell you, I'm going to do a class around that.
Okay,
A study group around that because so much can come from that. So I'm just grateful to have this opportunity to sit in with all of these great minds, all of them that have been here. It's just a blessing, and I'm almost overwhelmed. Um, Very seldom do you see something like this. In fact, I've never seen anything like it.
Mm.
I haven't either. Yeah. Yeah. I just give thanks and praise to Olodumare and all the ways Olodumare has expressed in and out of the earth. Because I have prayed to be in the company of my elder, Queen Mothers, and just to really have that experience again of being able to learn and listen. And I just thank you both for that today. You brought up character, and that's like something I really, I mean, it's a conversation that mostly women I've seen introduced. I haven't seen I haven't seen it introduced by a lot of people who aren't women. I'll just put it that way. And I feel real strongly about it as a piece that might be not getting the attention that it deserves, right? Because in order for us to really be of service, we gotta grant people safe passage through our consciousness, and we have to be integrity. Like we can't be. I remember distinctly one of the first times that I got corrected, and it wasn't a soft correction either. It was like, you can't disrespect your own mother in her face or out of it, because me and my mother had some contention at the time, and lay down in front of Yemajah's shrine asking for stuff. Like those are two things that don't go together. So you can get your life straight.
That is
so
true.
It taught me, that one lesson taught me so much about like what you're doing in ritual, what you're doing in prayer, needs to be
Mhm.
consistent with who you're being in the world.
Absolutely.
You don't get to leave out this door and all of a sudden you better than all the other black people. Like, get your life together and then
Right.
come back and apologize. Because when you disrespect your mother, you disrespect a whole host of spiritual
Absolutely.
entities. So you got,
Absolutely.
and it's just things like that, that I realize in divination comes out that we get to pay attention to how we're being, and that
Mm-hmm.
one small thing can be blocking everything because
Absolutely.
we looking for something to come to us, but we are the one that's in the way.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ashe.
Yes.
Well, we be back in here tomorrow, family. We shall see you tomorrow. The blessing, y'all.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.